Well, aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to PWT Talks NXT. We're talking NXT for September the 10th, 2024. A very, very busy show. After I just had a very busy card show, I'm a manager of a sports card shop. Spent all last week in Dallas. Videos are all over of that, and I end up in my share of videos from these, like, I guess they're famous influencers, but I don't watch their content. So everybody's like, "Oh man, you were on his video," and I'm like, "Yeah, whoever he was, that's great." So that was my week. Lots of selling of cards, and now I'm here to talk wrestling. To be honest, my body's not ready for me to be back like, at all. So I'm hoping that my hips and joints and everything doesn't just break down while I'm doing this. Okay, enough about me. Let's talk about people who put their bodies through way more. Um, the wrestlers from tonight, Nate. We had a last man standing main event: Trick Williams versus Pete Dunne, number one contenders match. This went 14-16, which is short for a last man standing match. But it's long for an NXT main event on TV now. So there is that. Trick Williams, of course, is your number one contender. Earlier on, Ethan Page was trying to be cagey and acted like there was he didn't want to face one of them more than the other. But that was all bluster because he tried to help Pete Dunne win this match so he wouldn't have to deal with Trick Williams again. But Trick backdropped Ethan Page through the announce table, and Trick Williams is your number one contender. The only other thing that they wedged in there in the main event is letting us know that CM Punk will be on next week's show to give some insight into the October 1st show, which we already know quite a bit about, thanks to tonight's episode. But main event, Trick Williams, Pete Dunne. Pete loses two very physical matches on back-to-back nights. With that eye injury, it's a nice thing that he was even here, Nate.
You got to question Ethan Page here, right? Because you're rooting for Pete Dunne to win, so you don't have to deal with Trick Williams. But if Pete Dunne wins, then you've got to deal with Pete Dunne. I don't know. That doesn't that seems just as scary to me. Anyway, I don't know. I'm never like never a major fan of a last man standing match unless it's really been built up and is I don't know, like this feud just didn't feel like it deserved a last man standing match. Like, sure, they've been kind of feuding and at each other's throats for a little while, maybe some sort of a stipulation match or something, but I feel like with last man standing matches, they get anticlimactic sometimes while you're waiting for the referee to count to 10. And you know that unless it's the finish, they're gonna just jump right up at the count of 9, or 8.5 or something like that. So it's I don't know, that's just kind of my own gripe. But other than that, not a bad match. Like you said, a little bit short for last man standing, but considering the time they had and all that, both I think it was like 15 minutes or so. I guess it worked. Kind of with this booking and thinking back to Ethan Page retaining the title at No Mercy, I kind of think we may wind up seeing a title switch back to Trick Williams on this CW show, the CW debut show rather, simply because they're probably going to want like a feel good moment to kind of kick off, or sorry, to probably end the show. I would assume that match would probably end the show. So I think they'd want like a feel good moment to like end the match, end the show, and kind of send everybody home happy on that very first night on the CW. So that's kind of where I foresee this going. But I think Pete Dunne was a nice little stopgap though for Trick Williams, all said and done. Kind of a nice little feud to get him out of Ethan Page's way so he could do some other things for a little bit, but then we kind of come full circle back to Trick. So I dig this. And like I said, I think we're gonna see a title switch at that CW show first night on CW.
Yeah, last man standing is not my jam either for all the same exact reasons you outlined, having to sell something for 9 seconds that otherwise you would sell for 4 or 5. Those kind of things, and then having to get up early for some of them when you would be selling them for more like 30 seconds. Those are the constraints of a last man standing match. Whatever they did, what they did, they wanted to go big for WWE Week on the USA Network. In fact, after the show ended, they did the Bray Wyatt special. And I got myself sucked into the first 5 minutes, and then I was like, I better do my show here because I have not watched that yet. So
I've got a DVRing right now. Although I guess I could just watch it on the network. Why did I DVR it?
Yeah, it's probably on the network, but I haven't on Peacock. But I haven't checked that out yet. I am not sure. So okay, that was our main event. I guess I would think Trick wins this back also, but I don't know how long they need Trick to anchor this show. I guess that's the big question. How much longer do they feel it is necessary to keep him down in Florida before he moves up? I think he's a good candidate for maybe a Royal Rumble call up. And if you're not a long time listener, I say that every year about everyone. I say a lot of people are going to be Royal Rumble call ups, but I'm calling this one for real. He's a Royal Rumble call up. I was right about Braun Breaker, but I mean, everybody knew that was going to be the right time to bring up Braun
Shayna
Breaker.
Baszler's going to lose her title this week too. That was another one we could never call.
Oh yeah, this is the week. Yep, this is the one because she's going to move up. Okay, there was a lot of wrestling on this show, so I'm not sure how they wedged in so much storyline because this is the largest amount of in-ring minutes they've had for a while. Bell-to-bell time was 60 minutes and 44 seconds. They rarely go over the hour. And it was actually a little bit more than that. That's almost a little bit misleading because it was 11:57 bell-to-bell in Javon Evans versus Charlie Dempsey. But Charles, who am I, Ren Sinclair? But I'm not counting the time in between rounds. Since I mentioned the match, I might as well go to that, even though it isn't the second most important thing necessarily. Tavian Heights comes back and helps Charlie Dempsey defeat Javon Evans. All of these matches are going 2 falls to 1. Sometimes, guys, you can just do the 2-0, but whatever. This was probably not the time. However, this was the rare time where the person who won the first fall also won the match. They've been getting real predictable with somebody, with the winner of the fall being ABB. This time it was ABA. So there you go. Charlie Dempsey still champion. Javon Evans going down as Tavian Heights hit him, I believe, with a belly-to-belly out on the floor and tossed him back in prone to the pin. 11:57. Dempsey still your champion. So probably would have saved this for just about last if I hadn't mentioned it, because nice match, but not necessarily bigger in the scheme of things. So I guess hit the Heritage Cup match, Nate.
Sure, why not? I enjoyed the match. I didn't think Javon Evans really had a chance of winning this here, kind of in the grand scheme of things. Like, I was rooting for him, sure. It'd be cool to see him kind of hold that, hold the cup. We've talked about what makes a good NXT Heritage Cup champion, and like I feel like Javon Evans is kind of he's in there, right? I think Charlie Dempsey and No Quarter Catch Crew kind of embody that a little bit more, but Javon Evans certainly could. So I think, like, if he was to hold it, we'd see some really good matches for a while. Not that we don't here with Charlie Dempsey, but yeah, I think this is a good showcase for Javon Evans, kind of show what he could do. It's funny watching this match tonight, and the more I watch Charlie Dempsey, the more I think I'm watching William Regal. Like, I see shades of Regal here and there, and it's just really cool to see. Regal's one of my favorite, like, not like one of my absolute top like 5 favorites, but he's always been somebody that I really really liked. So it's cool to just watch watch his son, and even though there's no clear tie there other than that like one time they showed up on TV together, um like it's cool, one of those if you know you know. Um let's see. Yeah, Tavion Heights returning, helping to win, or helping Charlie to win this match. I mean, he had to return sometime. Makes sense for him to do it now. He was gone for what 2 or 3 weeks doing something over in Japan. Um, so I think it makes sense to bring him back here, considering that usually the No Quarter Catch crew do something to retain the title, or retain the cup rather, some sort of legal tactic or whatever. So it works. Um, yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say.
Azam White in the chat says, "Is Sinclair a heel? She needs more heel tactics." I don't think she is. I don't think that she is a heel necessarily. She's in a stable that leans a little more babyface or heel, depending on the group they're up against. The guys are a little more heelish. Miles Bourne is more, I don't know, a plank of wood, I guess. And
Yeah,
then the other guy, Tavian, was obviously a little more heelish tonight. Ren is more just somebody who talks her group into trouble a lot and really wants to be accepted by the guys. So I don't think it's as simple as heel face right now, even necessarily across this company in some ways. But I think that they are almost going a little bit New Japan and a little bit of even within factions, even some of these running buddies have more heelish and more babyface members, as some of those groups do. Okay. All right, I don't want to go any longer without talking about Giulia. So let's talk about Giulia. Giulia versus Chelsea
let's do it.
Green was the second match tonight. And Giulia, as I said in my post, is silky smooth. She was only getting started when I was briefly watching Stardom. Well, she was getting started in Stardom when I was briefly watching Stardom regularly, and I saw just enough to know how good she was. And then I saw some more of late when New Japan was doing stuff with Stardom. Well, because they're same parent company, Bushiroad. It's a whole thing. I won't get into it here, but so yeah, I've seen my share of Giulia, and I thought that Chelsea Green was a little bit of an auspicious person to throw at her because Chelsea's just Chelsea. And Chelsea was just Chelsea in this match too. 6:53. Chelsea played full heel here. Speaking of somebody who leans babyface or heel, depending on who she is feuding with at the time. But Giulia, of course, hits the Northern Lights bomb and wins at 6:53. Later on, Ava's talking to Giulia, Funaki doing a little bit of translation for Giulia, and Ava's just thanking her. Roxanne Perez shows up and says, "This is her place. Giulia can't have it." And Giulia says, "I get it. You're scared. You should be." And that got a very big pop. Keep it simple, and that's all they had to do. So I don't know, man. Giulia stands up there and just looks into the camera, and she owns the freaking place. Nate?
And so did Funaki. I was so happy to see Funaki on TV tonight, but that's not what we're here to
Absolutely.
talk about. Um, I yeah. Anyway, I'm just gonna go into something about Funaki, but I'm not even gonna bother. Um, I like the presentation of Giulia. I really do so far. All the way up into like to Funaki having to have a translator, whether it be the legendary man himself or not. Um, I think even just kind of up to that, it gives her a bit more mystique, especially for somebody, like I guess like myself that doesn't know a whole lot about Giulia, and is kind of being introduced to her for a whole, for the first time. There's a lot of like, what's she all about? And who is she, and all of that. There's still, like I said, that mystique there. And I think they're kind of capitalizing on that in a pretty good way here. Um, Yeah, like you said, Chelsea Green, interest. It's I don't know. It's kind of weird that the more I'm thinking about this, that like they brought somebody down from the main roster to work with her for her first match. I understand kind of where they're going with it. We talked about it a little bit last week, like why they might have used Chelsea Green or something like that. But I don't know. Maybe it would have been nicer to maybe put somebody else on the roster, maybe like a Fallon Henley or something in that spot, just to kind of maybe put a little bit more shine on them or something like that. But other than that, I can't really complain. It was a decent match. I think Giulia looked fantastic. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the ceiling is for her here, and I think the ceiling is probably standing on the roof. So yeah, Chelsea Green, like you said, interesting choice. But I think it worked. I think it worked all said and done. And we could still see her come back down here and kind of whine and complain and be a little bit of a thorn in the side of Giulia for a little bit. Maybe it's her first like real feud outside of the title picture or something like that. I don't know. A couple different ways they could go with it, but like I said, really looking forward to seeing what she's going to be doing here in NXT.
In the chat, Michael Gross says Giulia is amazeballs. Yes, that is correct. Steve Repshire says we got a fair share of Japanese strong style, but it seemed a bit watered down from what I remember in Japan. One of the people in the match was Chelsea Green. Is all I'm going to say to that. Azan White says Giulia speaks great English, by the way, just giving Funaki a paycheck. Yes, indeed, she is fluent. The word I don't know. It's but she speaks perfectly functional English. I actually speak perfectly functional Japanese for those of you who are dropping in for the first time. And I will say very controversially, Giulia wa totemo kawaii. So that's my controversial opinion. She's good looking. Okay, we go to the opening. The Street Profits versus Axiom and Nathan Fraser. This is for the Tag Team Championship. This went 750. Just a little bit of fan service because they weren't going to run that not MSK Rascals match. So did a bit of an angle. Later on, Wesley shows up and says Trey Miguel couldn't show up because he's hurt. So they're setting up a rematch between Lee and Wentz, which there's your reason that Wentz got to win that match because yeah, they're not going to. So they're not going to lose here. I call this one a win for the Street Profits in DQ. Call it a no contest. They used to tell us what had happened. They don't tell us anymore. 7 minutes and 50 seconds. The match ended when the Bloodline attacked the Sons of Haku and Jacob Fatu. So I thought this was very good, and this was the kind of match that that kind of proves that once you're on the main roster a lot and getting a lot of reps, iron sharpens iron, and the Street Profits just look like they're on another level. It was really good and a great way to open the show, Nate.
It really was, and it's cool to see Street Profits coming back down to NXT. I'm sure they've been back to NXT since they've left. I'm sure it's happened, but I can't pinpoint an exact time. But they got their start in NXT, at least in WWE. So cool to see them, come back down and spend some time down there. Always fun to see that. This was a good match. It really was. Like you said, Street Profits are, in terms of tag teams in WWE as a whole, I mean, they've got to be top one or two in terms of just I think of everything. Their gimmick, what they can do in the ring. I mean, they're spectacular. Put them in the ring against a couple guys like Axiom and Nathan Frazier, and you're going to get what we got here tonight. It was fast paced and a little bit frenetic at times, but I think everybody here came out looking better than they did when they went in. Street Profits obviously got the win, so they look good. But I think even Axiom and Nathan Frazier, yeah, sure, they didn't quite get the win over the main roster team, but they came close a few times. They still looked good. And yeah, it all kind of, I guess, works out anyway, because it was with the DQ finish, Bloodline coming out, and it attacking the Street Profits. I think like I said, I think it kind of works. You don't have to have the Street Profits lose, and kind of do a job down in NXT where they probably shouldn't be losing. And you don't have Nathan Frazier and Axiom losing the titles. So it's kind of, I guess, worked all the way around. Plus, you also get the Bloodline in NXT, even though it's not the better Bloodline, the old Bloodline. But this isn't SmackDown post show, so whatever. But still, like, I was I when Tama Tonga came down and attacked, I was like, I saw him from behind, and I was like, that's Tama Tonga. Like, I wasn't necessarily expecting it, but it was cool to see. Definitely cool to see that the three of them come down, and kind of continue their main roster feud down here in NXT.
Ozon says, what would be the issue with giving Nate and Axiom a win here and do a beatdown afterwards? I thought about that. But the Profits have taken a lot of L's of late. And by of late, I mean for a couple of years on TV. So not making them take one here is fine. And it's not like Axiom and Fraser really, really need this win. They do win almost all the time. So I guess I'm less up in arms about it. It is weird to see a non-finish on this show, and we saw 2 out of the 7 matches. But I was watching Raw at a time where 4 out of 5 matches would end in no contests or whatever. Brian Alston also adds, we are nearing the introduction of the Street Profits 8 years back. Yes, we are. Tom Stopp and I do NXT 8 years back, and we talk about what was happening, who was coming up 8 years from the week. We're talking about that and the very last episode of the Cruiserweight Classic this last year, this next week. And so, yes, we are seeing Montez Ford wrestling under his real name, Kenneth Crawford, I think, just once or twice in wacky tag teams that he did not stay in, or singles matches. And we've seen a couple of years of Angelo Dawkins trying to make something stick, a few different things, doing his stirring motion a lot. The stuff that did not work before he finally found a home with his buddy Montez Ford. So yeah, cool stuff there. So all right, might as well talk about.
Hold on, am I thinking wrong? Or was Ty Dillinger and Angelo Dawkins a tag team at one point in NXT?
Yes.
Like for a very brief moment in time.
Jason Jordan and Ty Dillinger were a team for 5 to 8 matches. I think all of which they lost.
I remember
that
Dawkins
was Jordan and Dillinger. Dawkins teamed with Alexander Wolf, who joined Sanity, and a couple other guys. So, yeah. There, Alston says Dawson's been in NXT since the beginning.
Yep. Yes, he has.
Yeah. Dawkins.
Yes, he was.
Yes, indeed. He was. So let's go to the other non-finish. Jordan Grace versus Saul Ruka.
Sawyer Fulton. This one ended, that's what it was. Thanks, Brian.
Yes, Sawyer Fulton. Thank you. I knew it was a member of Sanity. I picked the wrong one. I picked Alexander Wolf. Sawyer Fulton, the one who got injured, and then they eliminated him from the group by having one of the guys throw down his jacket and stomp on it. He didn't even get to be written out on screen. Poor dude. So Jordan Grace versus Saul Ruka. This ended in exactly 9 minutes. The lights went out. Jordan Grace had things in hand. They had a nice little match. I think half of it was during the commercial break. And I don't watch during split screen. I just don't. So they were attacked by Rosemary and Wendy Chu because this episode was an employment program. They wanted to get absolutely everyone on it in one way or another. Rosemary and Wendy also did a weird doll parts promo that, Rosemary said a lot of cool things. Said them in a semi-okay way, whatever. She's okay. So I guess that Jordynne Grace didn't get to win this, but it's a successful defense. Vic talked about how this was her 15th successful defense, which closes her in. He mentioned that the record was 17, although he didn't mention who actually has that record. So I can't tell you, folks. I'm not a TNA guy. I haven't watched TNA since AJ Styles was there, which was some time ago. So Grace, Ruka, Nate, go ahead.
This was a great match. I was a little bit marred, I guess, by the finish. I wanted to see some sort of a clean finish. I didn't think we'd wind up seeing Sol Ruka capture the TNA Knockouts Championship, but I wanted to see her try. It's, I guess, fine. We're setting up for something else here. I think I kind of like this Wendy Choo and Rosemary pairing. We keep wondering what's next for Wendy Choo and what she's doing and what this night, like, I'm calling her Nightmare Wendy Choo. They've kind of said Nightmare a few times on TV. I don't know if that's like her name or not, but whatever. So we're going to call her. We kind of wonder what the ceiling is for her and where this character is going to go. She had that vignette earlier in the night that was just like really creepy, almost like Bray Wyatt-esque is kind of like the vibes it was giving me. I really liked it. And then of course in the middle of that, Rosemary comes in and we realize, okay, like this is a thing. Like this is a thing that's going to happen again. It already happened last week, but they're continuing it. And then obviously, they attack Jordynne Grace here tonight. Azan White, says that they're sending up Wendy Choo and Ariana Grace in TNA right now. Sorry, not Ariana Grace, Jordynne Grace. Ariana Grace did show up there, so I'm not totally wrong. But yeah, so I think it's cool, kind of, I guess, setting up some angles, for TNA and kind of, you scratch my back, we'll scratch yours type of a thing. I think Sol Ruka looked really good here tonight. Not that she doesn't every night, but I think she held her own against, the Knockouts champion.
All right. Obafemi, he had a surprise opponent too. This one handpicked by Tony D'Angelo. Tony D'Angelo was seen talking to this guy and handing him a bunch of money. Is Alex Hammerstone actually taller than Tony D? Because the person back there was taller than Tony D'Angelo, and I can't make Hammerstone taller than he was, but Hammerstone just looked small because he was in there with Obafemi. But anyway, this was a hard-hitting, brief one, 5 minutes, 25 seconds. Very, very jarring for me to see Hammerstone on this show. This is somebody I've been aware of for a long time and have seen a handful of matches. Saw him, I think he won one of MLW's Battle Riots, which is their 40-man Royal Rumble match. I think he won one. I watched them all, but my memory is not what it used to be. So Obafemi, anyway, wins at 5:25 with the power slam over Hammerstone. So Tony D is going to have to throw some more money around. Steve Ripsher says that shadowy presentation made me for a moment think it was Moose. Oh my, that would have been a lot of height in this match. But indeed, there you go. Michael Gross does say Hammerstone did win a Battle Riot. So there you go. And then I was on saying Hammerstone was wearing lifts tonight. So yeah, I guess that's how they got away with that backstage segment with whoever was actually standing there. So Hammerstone versus Obafemi.
So Tony D'Angelo comes in, at least is billed at 6 foot on the dot. Hammerstone billed at 6'4". So if that's legit, there's 4 inches, but who knows? It's wrestling. I thought this was pretty cool. We haven't really seen anybody in NXT be able to go toe to toe with with Obafemi, um, uh, with arguably the only person that has come close so far was Tony D'Angelo. I thought he looked pretty dominant in their match at No Mercy. All things considered, I think he got a lot more offense than at least I expected. Um, but so yeah, there's nobody in NXT. You look up and down the roster, and who's going to take out Obafemi? Who's going to take out Obafemi? Well, maybe not somebody on the roster. This was cool. Bring somebody that's powerhouse from TNA over here and actually make them look really good, or make themselves look really good against Obafemi. I'm vaguely aware of Hammerstone, but again, I'm also not a TNA guy, so I have not I don't really know much about him, other than the fact that he's big beefy, and was able to take it to Obafemi. I thought this was cool. I thought this certainly worked out. Interesting that what was I going to say? It's kind of interesting that Tony D'Angelo did have to call outside the company, but thinking outside the box. Got to give the Don some credit for that. There was one other angle here that I wanted to talk about, and I'm blanking on it. I don't remember what it was, so I'm gonna move on, and if I remember, I'll just blurt it out later.
Okie dokie, cool. All right, I've probably taken that down. Okay, so Hammerstone is taller. They took one of the tall TNA guys and put him against the one guy that would make him look short. I guess that's what you do. Michael Rose says, I would have double DQ'd it. I guess they didn't want to have 3 of those on the show. I don't know. You have to protect him. I'm not sure. But I don't know where he is on the card at the moment. And it is Obafemi. Azam White also added, I wish Tony and Oba was one-off, really. So do I.
Yeah.
Tony is just not on his level, and this stuff he's doing, maybe it's just meant to, I mean, Oba's been booked as a heel, even though he's been received as a babyface, like completely. And Tony's booked as a babyface, but mafia. So maybe they're trying to turn him heel again. I have no idea what this is supposed to accomplish, as he's throwing around weight. Okay, there was one other match on this thing. Duke Hudson versus Ridge Holland. This is a feud match, but this one was the shortest match of the show. 409. Ridge Holland wins with the Redeemer, beats Duke Hudson outside, does the Redeemer again. Riley Osborne was taken out with an injury angle, and Thea Hale was there to cry on her lonesome and implore Ridge Holland to stop because they had their thing. So I don't know. It's odd whatever they're doing here with Ridge Holland and Thea Hale, but they're doing something, Nate.
Yeah, it is. I'm not sure what, but they started planting the seeds for this, back when Ridge Holland was still part of NXT, and him really thanking Thea Hale for embracing him, and kind of making him feel like part of Chase University and all of that. Obviously, we're here now. Ridge Holland turned on everybody, and yeah, like she was ringside during this beatdown, and doing a lot of crying and screaming and pleading for Ridge to stop. I'm actually very interested, because I'm such a big fan of Thea Hales. Really, like, I'm really interested to see where this goes next week. Is Ridge going to wind up calling her out? She's the only one left standing in Chase University right now. And if she does, who's going to wind up coming to her aid? Is it going to be a returning Andre Chase? Because can he really be in the hospital for 3 weeks? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, this, I don't want to say I necessarily am in. I'm not enjoying this Ridge Holland angle. It's. Uh, I guess a little bit, I guess in a way kind of saw it coming because like he kind of didn't fit in and all of that, to Chase University and you're losing the titles and all of that. Like I guess in a way, kind of saw it coming, but yeah, at the same time, I like kind of the way they're going about this. I mean, the fire that Duke Hudson had tonight coming out before this match, calling out Ridge Holland and giving his best wishes to Andre Chase, still in the hospital from the beatdown 2 weeks ago. I, he had a lot of fire, and I think that energy kind of carried over into this, albeit short match. But the real story was everything that happened afterwards. Yeah, I think this is really to kind of cement this kind of, I'm going to use the term bastard, Ridge Holland, in kind of make him, get him over a little bit more, kind of akin to what they're doing with Bronson Reed on the main roster, and excuse me, having him come out and give, I can't think of the name of his finish, but give that big
The
splash up
Redeemer.
the top rope.
Yep. Oh wait, Bronson Reed. You're talking
Bronson
about
Reed.
the tsunami. Yeah.
Tsunami. Thank you. It's easy enough to remember, but I couldn't. But giving people tsunamis over and over and over again. I think it's kind of akin to something like that. Big beatdown at the end. He's taking everybody out. So we'll see. We'll see where this winds up leading. If I had to guess, I think it's going to lead to the triumphant return of Andre Chase, and it's probably going to be a Chase versus Ridge Holland match.
Okay, so yeah, I also wrote down the Duke promo just because he doesn't get to do those solo babyface fire promos very often, but when he does, man, he really does them well.
He's
The
good
only
at
two I
'em.
can think of were this one where he got beat, and then Obafemi where he got beat. So he got to do it twice. So at least there's that. Okay, Lexus King was in the barber shop and he was talking about Oro Mensah, basically bragging about cheating to beat him, and then Mensah attacked him. So Mensah in that weird position where he's getting a push, but he's not winning matches. Could use one over Lexus King, and I could use somebody beating Lexus King because I really want to see him lose. So I don't know if it's working or if I'm just sick of him. I don't know. That is the situation there. So we will, I don't know. There's a lot of backstage segments. We're not going to one by one them. So let's throw in Tatum Paxley and Lyra Valkyria, which is probably pre-taped. Maybe it was live, but Lyra wouldn't have had to be there for this. And she was on Raw last night. And then why not Brooks Jensen and Dion Lennox talking about gaslighting? Apparently, Jensen wanted to wait exactly 7 days before he asked him what he meant by gaslighting. Wanted to wait until today, and then Sean Spears gaslit him a little more. So, okay, anything on those particular backstage?
Let's see. Lexus King, he's got the weirdest beard I've ever seen. I don't know how he gets it so thick, it's so short, but he does. It's crazy. Yeah, I don't know, Lexus King and Oro Mensah. I'm high on Oro Mensah. I really am. But we've talked about it quite a bit on the show. Lexus King just kind of fallen flat, at least for me. So I don't know. I guess with considering where they want Lexus King to be on the card and maybe where they're trying to get Oro Mensah, maybe it makes sense to put them together. But yeah, to me, I just like you said, I'm just kind of hoping Lexus King winds up getting his ass beat. Then Brooks Jensen. What the heck's the guy's name?
What? Which one? Dion Lennox?
Dion Lennox. Thank you. Dion Lennox telling him that he's being gaslit by Sean Spears and things like that. it's kind of funny. You sit back and you watch this, and you listen to Sean Spears, and he's like playing like almost like the perfect like cult leader, the perfect gaslighter. Like he's essentially saying all of the quote right things to make Brooks Jensen just kind of blindly believe him. It's some uh, textbook emotional abuse here, but I I don't know. I'm not like again, I don't hate the angle. I'm not like in love with it. I'm interested to see where it goes, I guess, simply because I'm just kind of wondering where Brooks Jensen goes. He's been floundering ever since parting with Josh Briggs. But uh, I'm wondering if this is going to wind up culminating, Sean Spears kind of pushing Jensen to do things that he doesn't necessarily want to do, or something like that, and then Jensen finally realizing like, oh, Spears, you were the bad guy the whole time, flipping him babyface or something like that. I don't know. Although I do like Jensen, I think more as a heel, at least in this current incarnation of his character. Lyra and Tatum, this was a weird segment, and it kind of plays into what I was talking about last week. Like, when Tatum first debuted this character, Lyra was still down here in NXT, and she started, stalking Valkyria and all this stuff. And so it was like, why would she come back? Why would she come back and help out her former stalker? And I know they kind of, water under the bridge and things like that before Lyra went up, but still, it just, I don't know, like, whatever. And then tonight they're playing with dolls, and Lyra's like kind of clearly like, I don't want to say weirded out, but uh, you could almost tell like she was handling Tatum with kid gloves, and it was pretty apparent right at the end, where Tatum has the head off the doll and she hands it to Lyra, and Lyra's like, okay, well, first what you do is you put this in here, as they kind of like fade out and go to the next segment. It's just a strange dynamic, very strange dynamic. Uh, I I almost feel like it's more comedic than anything, and I just don't know if it's going to help Lyra on the main roster at all. Although I don't know if that's the goal. The goal might be to put Tatum over. I don't know. Um, but looking at Lyra and her, I'm gonna say mediocre main roster run. Um, I just don't feel like coming back down to NXT, even though she's still doing stuff on the main roster. I don't feel like coming down to NXT and kind of having this weird relationship, this weird friendship with Tatum Paxley, who's not a character for everyone. I love it. I absolutely love the Tatum Paxley character right now. It's weird, crazy, just kind of little offer rocker, but it's definitely not for everybody. So I don't know. I don't know what if it's necessarily going to hurt or help, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Azan added Lexus King talking about his facial hair is a little too meta for his gimmick. Yeah.
Yeah.
They love to over-explain in wrestling, and they do it less than they used to, but some of these wrestlers can't help themselves. Just do the thing, let it speak for itself. You don't have to point it out. I'm always when this comes up, I'm reminded of Wesley Blake and Buddy Murphy. When they were together, Wesley Blake for a little while was wearing like 2 French braids in the back of his hair, and it made to look stupid, and they're chanting, "You look stupid," and everything like that. And then he grabs the braids and he's holding them up and like showing them. And it's like, dude, you don't have to point out the braids because we are looking at your head. Like we see them. It is, it drove me nuts. Like guys who get vanity plates that say the name of the car they got. It's like, we see the car. You don't, Nate, I'm down a rabbit hole, and you're probably going to have to yank me out of it. All right.
What?
Lola
No, you know what?
Galan-
I'm going to continue it. I'm going to continue. You know what I saw today? I saw a Cybertruck wrapped in green for a local Mexican restaurant. Why does a local Mexican restaurant need a Cybertruck?
I've seen more of those than I would have thought, which is to say I've seen 4. But that is more than I thought I would ever see. There were 2 different colors, so I'm guessing I saw 2 different guys' toys. Okay. Um, the ladies. Let's talk about them. Kalani Jordan and Lola Vice. Do the women care that there's just basically always a camera in their dressing room? It doesn't seem to phase them, but maybe it should. Kalani and Lola
Never
ran
really thought about
afoul
that.
of fatal influence um, twice, and they want to enlist the help of Jada Parker, but Jada is somebody who kind of runs alone. She showed up with a bat and wants to go to the mattresses. She wants to face them all on her own with her bat, but Lola Vice is thinking maybe they can all get together and maybe Kalani will be the one to broker a deal. Really liking that we have a budding actual character for Kalani Jordan because that was the one thing they decided they weren't going to give her at first. So, um, so there you go. The ladies backstage, I think that is that for them. And I guess the one other thing that had a bunch of ladies in it was Ashante the Adonis and Eddie Thorpe. Every week, Eddie has one or two more women following him around, which I think is a little bit. I think it's kind of funny that there's always a little more. Carmen Petrovich was in this scene, so I guess she's been downgraded to roadie for Eddie Thorpe. But they'll go next week as well. So oh, and Jade and Bianca, they're women too. They are going to show up on the October 1st show. Also, I don't know why, but there are going to be tag teams, heel teams that they could potentially face. I don't know if this will just be. I think Punk will likely not wrestle. He would probably just appear. But Jade and Bianca, I could see them working a match, maybe. Um, Nate, on those particular segments.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. I don't have a whole heck of a lot to say about the segments really, but I was thinking about this earlier tonight, and this was something that I think it was Vic said on commentary. Somebody said it wasn't Booker T on commentary. I know that. I think it was Vic. Um, and but basically, the once NXT moves to the NXT is going to be the only WWE show on broadcast TV, which is interesting. Like Raw, Netflix, SmackDown on USA. Will NXT potentially now be able to capture a larger audience? Like I don't know. It's I doubt it. I don't think it's when I say larger audience, I meant larger than like one of the main roster shows, but I didn't actually vocalize that. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case, but I mean, maybe there is the potential there. I'm not sure. Um, it's but I think because of that, because of not only is it just being the only broadcast show now, but also because of the debut on CW, they obviously they want to stack that card. CM Punk coming up. I think the following week they were advertising Cody Rhodes. They didn't. I don't think they brought it up tonight, but I think I remember seeing that advertised before. Um, so I mean, they're really kind of trying to stack these cards. But one of the other things that I was also thinking about that I meant to bring up and I didn't already. NXT has historically been a developmental show. What is going to happen now that we go to CW? Are we going to continue to be, that developmental show? They've already started to move away and kind of go back to trying to make it a third brand again, like Triple H, I think, wanted to do, 3-4 years ago, however long ago it was. And I think they're trying to get back to that. Now that we're going to have, more eyeballs on NXT or potentially more eyeballs on NXT on broadcast TV. Does it stay a developmental show? Are they going to try and refine this and try to make this a bit more of a third brand? Do more of the developmental matches wind up happening on Level Up? There's just so many different talking points and things that I think just interesting to think about that we haven't really brought up or haven't talked about. But yeah, I think they were at least worth mentioning. So I talked about them instead of those segments.
Okay, what do I have left? Hank and Tank, I left that one for the end because whatever happened so fast, I don't know what they were actually saying. So there you go. The Miz, he's going to be on the October 1st show, and then Wesley, he challenged. Oh, wait, we talked about that, didn't we? I think we did, and I just didn't.
We did.
I thought that this show was going to take a very long time, Nate, but I'm dang near sure we got to the end of it. But on the other hand, I did forget emails, so I better find out if we have any.
Yeah,
Just
let's do that.
one, just two. Okay, Kevin Catani says, salutations, gents. I hope this email finds you well. First things first, Giulia. Okay, now that that's out of my system, I must say that NXT is certainly on an upward trend. And while bold, I'd even say that the 2.0 era is squarely in the rearview mirror. Where do you stand on the trending of NXT? What 2 or 3 talents would you attribute the overall success to? Lastly, my exposure to him is regrettably limited, but I was very excited to see Hammerstone show up in NXT. He certainly has the look, and I'm excited that he'll get some mainstream exposure from this. That said, who is one male and one female TNA talent yet to show up on NXT that you would pop to see? I don't know, because I don't know who's in TNA. I'm sorry. Ask me about New Japan. So thanks as always. Go VIP and listen to 8YB. Office hours are now over. The Professor, Kevin P. Catani, PhD. I think in many ways what's going on is very, very similar to the 2.0 era. Like, I think people think of it as different, but they were just debuting so many green superstars at the time. Like, they're still treating it developmental, but they just put so many developmental people on TV at the exact same time. And the product really, really is, yeah. So Steve Repsure in the chat says, you think Kelly Kincaid was missing because it's baby time? Yes. Yes, I do. She looked damn near ready to pop. So whether or not it's happened, I would say abundance of caution. So there you go. Hammerstone. Yes, he does have a look. I think that he is. I think that he's an interesting talent. How old is he? Because
He's
I want to
30,
say
33. I looked it up
that's
because
not that old.
He looks older than he is, and he according to Wikipedia, he's only 33.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. I guess he's got time then, because he's like 5 or 6 years younger than LA Knight. So there you go. I guess he could do something. I have mostly just seen Hammerstone in the ring. I don't know if I 100% have seen one of his promos, so I can't tell you how they go. But it was fun for me to see Hammerstone, just because he is somebody that almost every time I picked an MLW show to watch, he was there. So Nate, I know you haven't seen a lot of Hammerstone, but what do you think of those prospects?
Yeah, like I said earlier today, I don't know a whole heck of a lot about him, but I think cool to see him here, especially in the position he was against Obafemi. I think this hopefully gave him a little bit more mainstream exposure, and it does something good for him. Kevin asked a couple people that we'd like to see show up here in NXT. One male, one female. Again, I'm not a huge TNA person. So when it comes to the women, like, I don't really know. But looking up and down the roster, I mean, maybe, like, I don't know, might be cool to see like Gail Kim show up, but just simply because it'd be weird to see her show back up in NXT, or WWE, although with Vince gone, who knows? Maybe that'd be a much easier sell for her. But that said, I'll give you 2 male names. The first one, Eddie Edwards. Eddie Edwards got his start up here in the New England area, and I got to watch a ton of Eddie Edwards matches back in the Wrestling Federation of America under a guy by the name of Steve Bradley. Steve helped train Kurt Angle, things like that. He ran a little promotion up here. And Eddie Edwards, this was, God, 15, 18 years ago. Geez, yeah, about 18 years ago, I think. And, he was always one of my favorites to watch up close and personal, at these little indie shows. I've kind of lost track of his career over the years, but from the few matches that I've seen of his, he's just gotten better and better and better. So I think he'd be somebody really cool to see show up in NXT. But there's one person that I think would be the coolest to show up in NXT, and that is the current TNA champion, Nick Nemeth. How cool would that be for him to come back to NXT with the TNA title and start spouting off, how he used to be the champion here. He went off to do bigger and better things. He's, now he's wrestling under his real name. He can talk about the death of Dolph Ziggler and all this stuff. And it's somebody that the WWE audience already knows. But this is also, does kind of good things for TNA, gets a little bit more, it gets more eyeballs on their product. But having some sort of a crossover talent like that, Dolph Ziggler, he was WWE through and through for what? 20 years, maybe a very long time. I think that would really be the coolest crossover. It would be, for him to come back to NXT as a different champion.
Michael Gross said this not for the first time in the chat. He said NXT versus TNA Survivor Series. I am in.
Oh yeah.
And specifically Survivor Series. I miss Survivor Series matches. I like them a lot. Please give me one. And then Josh Alexander or Speedball Mike Bailey. Steve Repsher brought up those names. Speedball is somebody who'd be real interesting. That guy is one of the hardest working guys in wrestling. He tries to make a point to take at least 300 matches a year. He's worked a lot. I've seen him a couple of times on New Japan tours. He worked the Best of the Super Juniors tournament, not this year, but last. And so I got to see him quite a bit there against some of their top talent, and that was awesome. As far as Eddie Edwards, would you believe he has worked in NXT before? The American Wolves wrestled the Ascension.
Oh, yeah.
One time
right.
they basically had like a 1 week tryout. They had one match that they actually showed, and they named the guys something else. The team was called the Wolves, I think, just the Wolves. But each individual guy had a different name than the ones that they usually go by. But they did have one match against the Ascension, and wouldn't you know it, it was by far the best Ascension match that had happened to that date, as they were running through team after team of jobbers. But that one actually got a little bit of time, like 8 minutes or something like that. So a hidden semi gem. Yes, the Ascension are in it, but I promise it's worth going back to. It's kind of a weird oddity if somebody wants to see that. American Pit Bulls. Is that what they called them? American Pit Bulls. I think that's right. That is what Michael brought up here. Yeah, I've seen that match a couple of times. Did not remember that because I'm old. Okay. Did I read Steve's email? I did not. Good evening, gentlemen. I have two topics that aren't necessarily tied to the show. Number one, to follow on the good Dr. Catani's email about the state of the TNA NXT exchange, would you say there's a little bit of disparity in the level of profile of talent we've seen on each show? From TNA, we've seen Joe Hendry and Jordan Craze, two wrestlers who are higher on TNA's talent scale than anyone NXT has sent to Impact. Wesley and the two-way exchange of the reunited Rascals is about at the top of that list, which otherwise contains the likes of Izzy Dame, Riley Osborne, No Quarter Catch Crew, etc. Does it make any sense from an NXT perspective to have someone of higher stature, Trick, Tony D, any of the champs, Lola Vice, make an appearance on a TNA show or pay-per-view? Tony D isn't that high stature. Like, I know they think he is, but whatever. Yeah, the problem is the mismatch in how known they are. TNA's got to send the big names in order for it to have any impact at all. And NXT can send anyone. And they will be recognizable. So you got to send somebody who's recognizable to a large amount of people. So there you go.
I mean, you don't want it to be like Sean Stasiak showing up to represent WCW, you know?
Yeah, you sure wouldn't. That is okay. Nate, I am watching. We've talked about this. I'm watching all of the WWE pay-per-views in order. I started when the network came and then took like years off of this project. I'm still only in 2001, but I've watched a bunch in the last 2 weeks. And I am at what I hope is the end of the invasion angle because it is brutally terrible. Particularly the actual pay-per-view invasion. It's awful. It's one of the highest. It is the highest grossing non-Big Four ever. It sucks out loud. Oh man, it is not good. Okay, Steve's other question. Number 2, do you, like me, wonder why the NXT ring introductions are name only, no hometown, or at least for the men? Wait, I think it's quite incomplete and always delivers a sense of something's missing. As always, keep up the good work and go VIP. Yeah, it's odd. And do you know when I really noticed it was happening? Because I didn't really take note of it. I noticed it when I saw Tiffany Stratton debut on the main event on the main roster, and they said Prior Lake, Minnesota, and I was like, Tiffany Stratton lives 4 miles from me. Like, I'm right. We're neighbors, dude. I could spit and hit her house. I'm telling you, I had no idea that Tiffany Stratton lived in my backyard. Prior Lake is so close to me. We have probably our local mall in both cases is the Mall of America. So probably have spotted her there and not known it at the time because she was not famous. So yeah, that was jarring. So that was the first thing. I don't think of it as something's missing. I think of it as them thinking, well, we don't know how we want to promote them yet. So if it's not a big deal, then let's just keep some of this stuff to ourselves and not get bogged down in it and not make that a big deal. And then when it comes time to announce that stuff, we use it because there's some wrestlers from Robbinsdale. They went from like Mr. Perfect and Rick Rude. That's another. I drive through Robbinsdale when I see my brother, who's only 20 miles from me, and Robbinsdale sounds posh, so that's where they said Rick Rude is from, even though they said Minneapolis for Mr. Perfect. Robbinsdale is not posh. It is garbage. It is. It's not all that. It's just in my head, even as a kid, because I didn't live in the cities. I lived in Minnesota, but I didn't live in the cities. I thought that Robbinsdale was really, really nice because it sounded like it would be. And Rick Rude was from there. So I thought it was like a rich area. And it's not at all. It's not at all. Michael Gross points out all the brutes came from Robbinsdale. It's true. Look into that sometime. Like I know that people have done memes of high school pictures of all the guys who came out of Robbinsdale in like 2 back-to-back classes. I think Z-Man was one of them. Can't remember all who it was. Steve Repture also says, and what happened with Mike Rowe? Mike Rome, he means. Alicia's pulling double duty.
Mike Rowe's still doing dirty jobs.
Yeah, there you go. Mike Rome is, I wondered that a couple of weeks ago. I thought that I was going to turn on SmackDown and see Mike Rome having his job back. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with him, but something is. Maybe he.
According to the internet, Mike Rome celebrates the birth of his first child.
Oh, that's a thing. He should be present for that.
Yes.
'Cause
So
that's
that's where he was.
more important than saying a few names every now and then. So there you go. Nate, anything on either of Steve's comments here? Otherwise, we'll run for the exits.
Yeah, I mean, so on the first point about the talent exchange, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. TNA, it's not nearly as big as WWE is, so they've got to send their big talents. Otherwise, that they send somebody over that you've never heard of before, and it's like, oh well, why should we care? But you send somebody over like Jordan Grace, Zachary Wentz, Joe Hendry. I mean, those are all names that are going to get WWE fans to actually care. Whereas in TNA, it's just cool to see somebody from NXT show up. I think it would be cool, if we did get some bigger names and there was some more buzz around the TNA stuff. That might even compel Kelly and I to tune in. But I guess it is what it is, and I mean, I think this is still a great symbiotic relationship for both companies. Um, and then in terms of the ring introductions, I did actually. It's funny that you mentioned that because I actually noticed it for Carmelo Hayes when he hit the main roster, and I don't remember what his main where he's being billed from, but I remember hearing it and being like, oh, I I don't remember hearing that in NXT. This was obviously months ago, but I mean I do think that they are important. Yeah, I remember as a kid, and even I mean even now, you hear somebody, I'm from New England. I hear somebody that is billed from New England. I get excited about it. When I was a kid and I heard that John Cena was billed from West Newbury, Massachusetts, I was immediately like, wait, what? Because I grew up about 5 miles away from, I mean, as I sit here right now, I'm maybe 5 miles from West Newbury, Massachusetts. um, I think it's kind of cool. It adds another layer to that character, and for people that live in that area, I mean, it helps you get behind them. But I think it makes sense in NXT if that is the reason that they do it. That they're not sure exactly where they want to go with these characters, so let's not lock them into a hometown or something. I think that does make sense, but I think it, especially for the main roster and bigger audiences, I think that is important.
All right, folks. I believe that is our show. I got no more emails there. I'm Kelly Wells. You can find me on social media at Spooky Milk or at SpookyMilk.games. Nate, who are you?
Nate Lindberg, check the things out I do at NateLindberg.com.
All right. Cheers, and we will see you in 7.